Critical issues in international, humanitarian, and human rights law. Attacks on civilian structures. These attacks not only violate legal frameworks, but also devastate lives, communities, and the very fabric of society. Let's dive into what this means, why it matters, and how international law seeks to protect civilians and their essential infrastructure. Under international law, attacks on civilian structures refer to the intentional or indiscriminate targeting of objects that are not military objectives. The Roma Statute defines this crime as intentionally directing attacks against civilian objects, that is, objects which are not military objectives. There's also other treaties and laws that prevent this too, including the Geneva and Hague Conventions. The key principle here is distinction. Parties to a conflict must always distinguish between military targets and civilian objects. Attacks on the latter are strictly prohibited unless these structures are being used for military purposes. What exactly counts as a civilian structure? Well, here are some examples. Homes. This is the most basic right to shelter and safety. Schools, places of learning and hope for the future. Hospitals, lifelines for the sick and the wounded. Places of worship, which are centers of spiritual and cultural identity. And cultural sites like monuments, museums, and historical landmarks that preserve a people's heritage. When these are attacked, the consequences are catastrophic, not just physically, but emotionally and culturally. Sadly, history is filled with examples of attacks on civilian structures. One example is the war in Syria, which saw the deliberate bombing of hospitals and schools during the Civil War, and currently the Ukraine and Russia war, which sees Russian attacks on residential buildings, hospitals, and places sheltering civilians. And also, historically in World War II, the widespread carpet bombing of cities like Dresden and Hiroshima. These examples remind us that this isn't just a theoretical issue, it's a devastating reality for millions, past and present. Why is protecting civilian structures so important? First, there's a humanitarian impact. Attacks displace families, destroy livelihoods, and cause long-term trauma. Cultural preservation. Destroying cultural sites erases a people's history and identity. And the rule of law. Upholding these protections maintains the integrity of international law. And fourth, future stability. Rebuilding after such destruction takes decades and hinders post-conflict recovery. In short, protecting civilian structures is about protecting humanity itself. Attacks on civilian structures are not just violations of law, they are attacks on our shared humanity. Protecting civilian structures isn't just a legal obligation, it's a moral imperative. By understanding, advocating, and acting, we can help build a world where such atrocities are no longer tolerated.